Yeah, it's an honor being here to share my testimony with you, Shane. It's actually another blessing and of God in the life that it's given me today. So my name's Martinez. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic addict, and when I say recovering, I'm still in recovery. I haven't recovered. I'm also a courageous survivor of sexual abuse and rape. And when I mean courageous, I mean, I've dealt with it and I understand that I played no part of it. So I've forgiven myself and I'm asking God to forgive me. You know, my journey is my journey basically starts. I lived in a beach community in Westchester, and growing up in that area, I was considered, a fat boy. And I was really confused about what was going on at home because I knew it wasn't normal. And what is normal? I just wanted to be loved and I just wanted to have friends. And, growing up in a beach community, it was very unlikely for me to be a part of anything, not just because I didn't feel like I belonged, but because I was fat, I was overweight. I wasn't able to do the things that other kids were able to do, like go down to the beach, take off your shirt, and if I did that, people would laugh at me, and that was just one more thing in regards to my insecurity and knowing that I wasn't loved and I didn't belong. In junior high, I had some friends, and my mom and dad, they smoked cigarettes, and so I came up with the bright idea: I'd steal some cigarettes from my mother and my father, and my friends liked me for that. You know, we were smoking cigarettes, and back then in the day, they were Winstons. So if my friends liked me for that, and I felt some type of belonging, then I came up with this other bright ideas. So I ended up going in my father's refrigerator and I stole a few of his Coors beer. Back in the day, everybody drank Coors, and I brought them some beers, and they really liked me for that as well. So there was this gentleman in the neighborhood, and he sold marijuana, and us kids knew about it, and we would always talk to him in the back alley in the area that I lived in. We had alleys and garages were in the alleys, and this guy, raced motorcycles and stuff like that. And back then, the marijuana it was called commercial weed, and you could get a lid or an ounce, for $10, and I thought that was a good idea. So I actually ended up going into my parents' pockets, my mom's purse, and I got the $10, and I bought that little weed, and I brought that to them, and I remember playing some Rolling Stones music, and we were smoking weed, and we were getting high, and that was my first time of dealing in the drugs, and you know what, they really liked me for that too. But you know what, I knew that they didn't really care about me. I still didn't feel the love, and I knew to them, because I couldn't go the places that they were going in the beach area, that I was still considered, in my mind, I was still fat boy. So time goes on, and I'm in high school. And it was the first year of high school, and my mom worked for a company called Daily Breeze. And Daily Breeze was a newspaper company, and I did deliver newspapers. My mom was like a supervisor, so she had other people on her route. And there was this lady that cut hair. And back then, you would see the movies and your sitcoms, and the end thing was to have your hair parted in the middle, and feathered on the side, and it would cover your ears. And my hair was part on the side, and my mom brought this lady over to cut my hair, and she cut my hair, and I wanted it parted in the middle, and she brought over her niece, and her niece was beautiful. Other boys my age, were going out with girls, and that wasn't happening for me. And I just remember sitting in that chair, and I was looking at her, and she wasn't looking at me. But the lady knew that I was looking at her, and after the haircut, she said, "Lang, you have a very handsome face, but honey, if you're going to be able to go out with girls, I'm sorry, baby, but you're going to have to lose some weight." I came up with this bright ideas. I knew about black beauties, and I started taking the black beauties, and I'm playing baseball. I was riding BMX, and I was definitely losing weight. I was losing a lot of weight, And then the girl started to take notice of me. You know, I'm no longer that fat guy. I'm slimming down. I'm riding bikes, and all of a sudden I feel some belonging, and I ended up getting a girlfriend in the valley, San Fernando Valley. And by getting that girl in the San Fernando Valley, she happened to be a Jewish girl, and I happened to be Hispanic, and she came from a good family. Her last name was Feingold, and you don't know at that age, but you know what? I finally found somebody that loved Lang, and I loved her, and she was actually the first girl I was with, and that didn't work out. So in high school, my friends told me about this guy, and this guy had a glass shop, and we could work there, cut glass, and this guy liked to party, and I ended up quitting this bike shop, and I went to work at this place with my friends, and the guy was a predator. Um, he was a predator. Uh, so there was lots of us young guys that were from the same high school in the same area, and then we worked there. And the guy that owned it, he sold cocaine, and he just didn't sell cocaine, but he sold cocaine to the who's who in Hollywood, and that's where my story goes. And I remember the first time I did cocaine. I fell in love with it. I ended up getting a half gram with a friend of mine. We went out there, and I remember we cut our first line, I think, on a Bad Company tape on a cassette. We chopped it up. We did it. We were drinking some Michelob's, and I remember that. Wow, this is it. This is it. And I work for this place. This is great. And I remember the feeling. It was like it was the most best feeling. The top of the teeth got numb, and but that half a gram between two people, it went pretty fast, and it was $50, and he deducted that from our check. So back working with him, he came to me one day, and he said, "Lang," he said, would you like to know Hollywood? Would you like to meet the who's who?" And coming from a broken family, and this guy's offering me this position. I was like, "Yeah, sure." This gentleman ended up teaching me the business of cocaine, how to cut cocaine, how to package cocaine, and I ended up learning from him. But what I did see in the clubs in Hollywood is that he was giving cocaine to the young boys. And it was a club called the Odyssey. It's in Hollywood, and it's a known place that was owned by Eddie Nash. And I learned how to sell cocaine, and I saw him, and he was bringing home different young boys, and he was sleeping with them, and they were mine. And I thought, one it would never happen to me. I mean, you're on the outside looking in, and I don't judge anybody, but I have a girlfriend, and I'm at this club, and there's people there. I get to meet stars, and it was crazy. And at this time, I'm living with him. What happened is I just wanted to feel love. I figured this was it, and it wasn't. Back in 1981, I ended up going to a concert in Inglewood, and we came home from the concert, and I was in my room, and he ended up walking in my room with a gun in his hand. And it wasn't a threat. It was like foreplay, and he was telling me that he loved me. This was not something that I wanted to do, but this was a person that I did care about. I figured he loved me, and what he did is he ended up sexually abusing me, and he raped me. At that point of my life, there was confusion, and this man's telling me he loved me. I lived on the beach. I felt like King Kong. I was driving. I was actually I was driving a Rolls Royce. I actually took it off roading. He told me to. It was a brown Corniche. I was driving Porsches. I had the car. I had money. I had unlimited cocaine. And this man told me he loved me. That wasn't love, and that was the beginning of my destruction. The destruction went from there to one thing to another, and then I started using the cocaine. Led to the freebasing at that time. The freebasing ended up in the crack, and the crack eventually ended up into the dark world of methamphetamine. In 1986, I had a habit. It was a crack habit, and I ended up going into a store with a friend in the valley, and we ended up actually, it was considered robbing it, and just to get some money, and I ended up getting away, and I eventually got caught. That was my first time to prison. I went to prison in 1986, and in prison, I looked around, and I ran with the gang. I was considered a Southerner, and I didn't want to get tattoos, and there was something inside me, and I believe it was God today, and I I I I wanted to be a part of something, and I was a part of that lifestyle, and that lifestyle was vicious. It was very vicious. And then when you're living that lifestyle and you're doing the things that you're being told to, and you're involved in hurting people, I knew I didn't want to live this life, and I ended up getting out of prison, and I was on parole, and I ended up violating parole for another dirty test, and I went right back to prison in 6 days, and I did it again. I got out, and this time here I got off parole, and I committed another crime, and I ended up going back to prison, and I didn't want that. 2011, 2011, there was accumulation of things that happened. As I got into a high-speed pursuit. I went to a neighborhood. I hit an old couple, and I went on pursuit, and I hid. There was helicopters, and they were looking for me, and I'm in this closet, and I really didn't care. All I cared about was I had to get away, and I had to get that next hit. I didn't care about anything else, but I did also know that I didn't want to live anymore. But the first thing on my mind was to get away. The addiction was that bad. I just wanted to get away, and I did. I got away from the situation, but before I got away from the situation, they closed down a neighborhood in La Crescenta, and it actually made the front page of the newspapers. And they did a door-to-door search, and there was a school in the area, and it had children in it, and the children weren't able to go home that day because it was blocked off, and there was two helicopters in the air, and those children were told that they weren't safe because of a guy named like Martinez, and they presumed that I was armed and dangerous. And I found this out later. So I got away. A couple weeks later, I ended up stealing a car, and I really didn't care no more. And I ended up in Burbank, and I did it one more time. I took off. I went in the high speed pursuits, and this time I didn't get away. They put the cuffs on me, and I ended up getting 7 years, 8 months, and that was in 2011. Sitting and doing that time, the 4 years and 8 months, man, I don't want to live like this. If I could just get the girl, maybe, or I got a job, and everybody says that when they're locked up, these things that'll fix them, but that's not what fixes anybody, and we'll get to that. I got out of prison. I was sober. I ended up accumulating some time, and I did it again. I ended up using again, and I had a very bad methamphetamine habit. I ended up homeless. I ended up homeless in Oxnard, and from Oxnard, I ended up hopeless and homeless in LA. I was on Vernon and Western, and that's a neighborhood, gang neighborhood. I was there, and I was staying in a place called First to Serve, and I wasn't getting no service there. I would come out of this place every day to chase down what I could get for that $5 or that $10 to put back in my pipe, and I saw death. I saw prostitution. I saw a lot of things, and I remembered them because I've had sobriety 3 times 5 years, and people would always say, "Lang, why the 5 years?" And I'd say, because of the pain. I realized then, back in 2018, what the pain was. It was something that I put back in my memory that I wasn't able to face, that I realized what this man did to me. And it came to me in an alley. There was this young prostitute, and her name was Coco. And I was going down the alley, and she was sleeping on a dirty mattress, and she just wanted to crack it. And I had $5 on me, and she was telling me what she was going through during the night, and they weren't paying her. And what she was sharing with me, it brought back what I knew what happened to me. That I was sexually abused and I was raped. It was something that was so far back that maybe I just couldn't face it. But I realized now why I had sobriety 3 times 5 years. And I've always made the comment because of the pain. I knew what the pain was. And I, and I saw her pain. And I didn't want to live like that. It ended up being as I was making phone calls, there was people there. And I didn't have a very good heartbeat. And it was July 25th, 2018. And my testimony is about God, my Lord and Savior. 2018, July 25th, I cried out to God. I had a heartbeat about 17 beats a minute. All I knew is all I had to do was close my eyes, and it was over. And there was something inside of me that I never belonged. The things I did, I knew that if I went out like that nobody would ever say something good about me. And I cried and I begged and I said, God, please save my life. And God, I swear, if you save my life, I promise you, I'll give it all back to you. July 25th, 2018, I surrendered and I got into a program called Acton. When I got into Acton, I started to learn things that it wasn't my thinking. I had to learn about that my thinking was broken, and I had to surrender, and I had to let God into me totally. I knew I had to live I knew I had to learn to live a different way than Lang's way. I started to get a foundation, and I ended up getting out of that program, and I ended up going back to Oxnard. And when I went back to Oxnard, I went back to work for a place for a gentleman named Ron Freeman. Ron Freeman was a guy that knew me in the alley, and it was a credit business and called CreditWise. And I got out. I went into a sober living. I started going to church. I got baptized. I start giving back by sharing my testimony. Not talking about why I had 5 years 3 times, or why I had just today. Telling people that if I hold on to yesterday and I hold on tomorrow, I can't stay footed today with my God. And that's the only way I'm going to do this one day at a time. Yeah, the program does talk about that. There was this pastor. I used to go to churches, and I would sleep in parking lots. And there was this pastor. His name was Pastor Gill, and he's my mentor today. And we work on things, and we talk almost daily. And he saw me one day when I was homeless, and I was in the parking lot, and he was up on this ladder. And this is before I got in the program, and I want to share the story. He was up on this ladder, and I walk up the driveway, and he says, "How are you?" I said, "Okay." He said, "Hi, my name's Pastor Gill. What's yours?" And I said, "My name's Lang." I said, "Can I use your bathroom? I just need to clean up." I didn't have any socks on. I didn't have a hairbrush. And I said, "Pastor, I promise you, I know this is God's house. And if you let me in this bathroom, I don't have any drugs on me. I just need to clean up." He said, "Okay." And I went in the bathroom and I cleaned up, and he was knocking on the door. The door was unlocked, but he was checking on me. He cared about me. I came out of the bathroom, and he ended up taking off his shoes, and he gave me his socks, and he gave me a sandwich. We went outside, and he prayed for me. And at that time, I had warrants. And he said, "How can there not be a God? Like, just look up." I did look up, and I saw his eyes. I saw his eyes. So when I got out of the program, I ended up calling Pastor Gill, and I ended up showing up at the church, and Pastor Lou was there, and I'll give him that message. So I'm out of the program, and I'm working for Ron Freeman at CreditWise, and I get this phone call from Pastor Gill, and he says, "Lang, are you at work?" I said, "Yeah, I'm at work." He says, "No, you're not. I don't see you." And I go, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm over at the Starbucks." He goes, "I want to meet Ron." So I walk out to the front of the location on Fifth Street, and across the street was called Plaza Park. Plaza Park is where a lot of the homeless were. And at that time, there was between 40 to 60 homeless people in this park. And Pastor Gill walks up to me, and we're standing in front of the commercial building where Credit Wise was. And we're standing there, and he's standing next to me, and he's looking at me. And he says, "Wow, Lang," he says, "take a look." I said, "I'm okay, Pastor Gill." He goes, "No, Lang, I really want you to look." And I look, and he says, "Lang, you know something?" "What's that, Pastor Gill?" "You don't see it?" I said, "No, sir." He goes, "That's your calling." I said, "Not me." Not me. So he ended up going in. He met, he met Ron, and him and I stayed connected. I started going to Dove Ministries, and I start going to I start going to Mission Church, and I became a I became a I became their homeless advocate. I became their. Can you still hear me? I became the homeless advocate for Mission Church, and they would call me, and I'd go out and start talking to people. Then all of a sudden, I ended up speaking at city council and sharing my story and about services, and I ended up in a documentary. It was called Humanizing the Homeless. My sobriety date, like I said, was 2018. May of 2019, there was a release of a documentary called Humanizing the Homelessness. And then I was doing stuff for Mission Church, and then May 24th, the first article went out in Ventura County. It was called Nobody Knows But Me, about being on the streets of Oxnard. And I ended up becoming an advocate in Ventura County in Los Angeles. And I started speaking on issues of homelessness and addiction and mental health, basically co-occurring disorders. And one thing led to another. And I was blessed by a platform of being in the media and being able to share my story with you, Shane. It's an honor about the experience and strength and hope. Working with the homeless and going out in encampments. And in some of these places I go to, they see me, and some of them tell me they're proud of me, and I look at them and their addiction, and I always tell them, I am you, and you can have what I have. All you have to do is surrender and give it all to God, and you can have the same life that I have. You know, my journey, I'll be coming up on 6 years, July 25th, 2018, and the road of recovery and this road has been about patience. And I'm 60 years old, going on 61, and you have to learn to let go, and don't do things Lang's way, and you got to let God take control and let him guide you down the path. you know doing a lot of work, and being a part of the things that I've done. There's been a loneliness inside of me. You work with individuals in recovery, and immediately the things start coming back to them, like their families, children. And my family still doesn't talk to me, but I do know, if I continue to do what I do, I do believe before I die that I'll be able to make that amends to my wife and my son, and and I do believe that someday I'll get to see my grandchildren. On this journey, and where I want to go, and the work that I want to do, and the ministry. I've always asked God, to put somebody in my life, and in the last week, I've actually smiled. If you look at a lot of stuff I do, I don't smile. I mean, there's a lot to smile about, but God's been with me, and recently, I've been blessed with this beautiful woman who's 60 years old, my age. And the first thing that we started talking about was God. We started talking about her church, the stuff she's doing, and we were talking, and I've been blessed with an opportunity to meet somebody that's very special and that cares about Lang. And her name's Laura. And that's been a blessing as well. You know, all things that happen in life you have to wait on, and you have to let God control everything. Because if I control something, it works out. It works out. It works out wrong. Today I've learned to forgive myself. Today I know that I make mistakes, and I try to make the amends. Immediately and appropriately, and I try to do something every day, and I try to ask myself, what would Jesus do? There's not a day that doesn't go by that I try to put him first. I try. I'm not perfect, but I have to give all glory to God. And I've been very blessed, and I'm very honored that I've been able to be a part of giving back my promise to God. A lot of people will reach out and they'll say, Lang, let me ask you something. Lang, we read your stuff. We know the work you do. We know how many people have you saved? And I said, this conversation ends. I go, I don't save anybody. Well, how many people have you helped? And I'll answer like this. On July 25th, 2018, I said, God, I cried out and I said, God, if you save my life, I'll give it all back to you. And my answer has always been to anybody. I believe I've kept my promise to God. And I do believe that I've helped one person. And that's always been my answer. My name's Lang Martinez. I'm a child of God. I am a recovering addict, alcoholic. I'm a courageous healer. I'm a courageous survivor of sexual abuse and rape. And I thank you for this opportunity, Shane. God bless.